I think it's worth talking briefly about mortgages. You know, mortgages are the biggest loan that most people are ever going to do in their life. And depending on the area that you live, we could be talking about $50,000. We could be talking about $200,000, $300,000, even more if you're making more money living in a more expensive area. And just to circle back around to the, you know, how much it costs and why this is good business for banks. So they have a little table here, which I think is worth reproducing. This is a $100,000 home. This is a 30-year payment. And these interest rates are pretty reasonable. Okay, so let me build this table again. So you got your APR, which is 3%, 4%, 5%. You got your monthly payment, and you got your total paid. This is for house price 100K, and this is length 30 years. Typically, banks are going to give you somewhere between 15 and 30 years if you want a mortgage. These are for fixed rate loans. There's also variable rate loans we can talk about on the side if you have questions about that. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I can tell you what I know. So these monthly payments actually come from the PMT formula, because what we're doing is we're taking the 3%. I can use a cell reference, dividing by 12. I'm doing this for 360 payments, and I'm doing it for minus $100,000. So that's where they got the 42160, which I believe is the number they have. Right. Notice that if I mess up and put the comma here, the answer that's going to come out is going to be weird. Right? I'm not making a 42-cent payment every month on a $100,000 house. Right? And you can kind of see what happened there. But on the other hand, if you forget the negative sign, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. You still get the right answer. Okay, so that's the 42160, and then we get the 47742 and the 53682. So looking at how much the houses cost, we know the cost of the house was $100,000, but the cost of the loan is obscured. We can go through the same process to get to the interest or the cost of the loan. The total paid is 42160 times how many payments are we making over 30 years?
360.
Okay, that's a lot of payments. Okay, so that is the cost of that loan. This one would be 477.42 times 360, and this would be 536.82 times 360. So these are all 30-year loans, but at different interest rates. And all of these, you know, 5% is not a great rate, but it's not like a terrible rate. Maybe it's bad now. Interest rates should be even lower. So then the question becomes, how much did the loan cost? So this is the interest slash the cost of the loan. How much did the loan cost in these situations?
So you would just do the total paid minus 100,000, right?
That's right, because the cost of the house, again, if you had a rich grandma who just gave you $100,000, then you could have paid for it outright, but you didn't. So you borrowed the money, you paid it over 30 years. So that you can see there the scale of what's happening. Even at the best interest rate, which was 3%, and that's a good rate, a solid rate, you're still paying $50,000 of interest. $50,000 of finance charges and fees to the bank to borrow that money. That is good business. Now it's 30 years, right? The bank lent that money out, but still that's not a bad return on the investment. And for every percent that it goes up, it looks like they're making about $20,000 more interest. So from your perspective, right, by the time you get up to a 5% loan, you're paying almost as much for the loan as you are for the house. Now, I'm not trying to discourage you from mortgages. Houses are one of the ways in which American families have built wealth, and it's one of the principal ways that Black families in particular were prevented from getting access to the ability to build wealth, because they were blocked from banks from even getting access to those loans. And that's changed somewhat. I mean, the practice of redlining, which you can look up, it's not happening anymore, but that doesn't mean that realtors are still not kind of steering Black families away from certain areas and white families into other areas. And it's still a big problem and a big reason for the wealth differential in the country. So anyways, there's a lot to think about as you get to that stage in your life where you're thinking about buying a house. I mean, these payments, if you think about whether they're affordable or not, I mean, if you're renting a place, you're probably paying more than that, right? But that doesn't mean that you're ready to buy a house, because number one, it's going to cost you a lot of money, to pay the bank for that. And number two, you also have to have like a reserve backup extra income to pay for things that go wrong. Because the beauty of living in a rental is, the theory at least, is other people are responsible when stuff goes wrong. If it's your house and you got squirrels in your attic and you got to do something about it, that's going to cost you money.